Hi, this is Brass Check, and we're recording this late at night on October 5th, 2023. And something I put in this book, and I think it was part two. So part one's the film, Fauci's First Fraud, which came out in 2020. And then part two, I call Before and After COVID. And it talks about Fauci's career before and after COVID. But one of the chapters, chapter 26, begins on page 221. I asked the question, what is an anti-vaxxer? And why do professional manipulators use this term? Professional manipulators, believe me, they exist. They include college professors, social psychologists, guys with psychological operations training, CIA people, NSA people, advertising people, public relations people. It's a big club, and they work hard at what they do. And one of their tricks is to create a dismissive term which you can throw on somebody to stop conversation, to stop questions, to stop thought, and to ostracize the person asking the questions. I mean, it's a linguistic device. And I've never heard anybody describe it as clearly as I'm describing it right now, but there must be a technical term for it somewhere. I don't know it. I'm pretty well read in this subject, but it is a thing, right? So conspiracy theorist, anti-vaxxer. These are two separate terms. The history of conspiracy theorist it was a term that existed, but it was pumped up and spread throughout the land at the very same time, coincidentally, that Jim Garrison was asking really hard questions about the John F. Kennedy assassination, and those questions were becoming a matter of national conversation. That's when conspiracy theorist became a big deal. All right. And again, that word is used to throw on anybody that asks any questions about anything. All right. Now, fast forward to the future or the present. Anti-vaxxer. That term's been floating around, not for very long, maybe, well, I'll tell you when it started. It started around the time that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., esteemed environmental attorney, started to get involved and asking questions, not making crazy assertions, not making wild claims, but just asking questions about the safety of vaccines and the operation of the vaccine industry. Okay, suddenly the term anti-vaxxer appeared. And I believe at this point in 2023, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is considered by the manipulators, the professional manipulators, and he's trying to make people, and they are trying to make others think that he is the king of all anti-vaxxers. Now, does anybody see the supreme irony here? The man whose father and brother were shot in the head by people with connections to the U.S. government, whatever those connections may be. We know Lee Harvey Oswald was a paid FBI informant. We know the CIA was tracking him. It's in their own literature, their own correspondence. Now that's this fact, guys. If you don't know it, it means you don't know what's going on. Okay, so these are now facts. So Lee Harvey Oswald was not some random dude that just came out of nowhere and had a grievance and shot Kennedy. He was a guy that was wired into the system. So anyway, so it's a supreme irony that the guy whose father and brother died under mysterious circumstances, which seem to point back to various national intelligence and law enforcement groups, has also, in addition to being tagged as a conspiracy theorist, he's also been tagged as an anti-vaxxer. I mean, think about that. And it's Kennedy, right? That they need to bring out the big guns, the big linguistic guns, to shut down the discussion of the assassinations and to shut down the discussion of the vaccine industry. And it just so happens that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's living, is the person who they're dumping all this on right now. Now, for those of you that still don't get it, okay, and I have it in the book and I explain it in quite a bit of detail in the chapter. Asking questions about the vaccine industry does not make you an anti-vaxxer. Kennedy says all the time that he's had his children vaccinated. I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, I'll tell you right now, I am an anti-vaxxer and proud of it. Okay. But he actually is quite reasonable, moderate, I guess would the term be. He just has questions. Let me show you about why I'm an anti-vaxxer and why anybody with a brain would be supporting Robert F. Kennedy Jr. heavily. Why? Because what he's asking for is investigation into the industry and into the government connections and into all the things that that involves. Let's take a look at some of what that involves. And if you're not a quote anti-vaxxer, you will be after you see this this article here. So hang on, I got to push all these buttons correctly in the right order. I'm getting better at this. Boom, done. Okay. So this comes from an attorney. Not that attorneys are necessarily reliable, but he is trying to maintain his reputation. And good guy. He puts out some really good stuff. And here's the article. So here's where I want. Let me come back for a second. Vaccines are not gifts from God that descend from the clouds in total perfection. I know this is a shocker really, this is a shocker for a lot of people. They've never thought about this. They've never thought that vaccines are manufactured, that there is a building somewhere, there are machines, there are people manning those machines, there are things they're supposed to do. There are standards they're supposed to adhere to in the sourcing of the materials that are going to be used to make the vaccine, right? You got to source the material, and they have to put it all together. They have to do it in we would hope, a clean, ideally a sterile, but at least a clean environment, right? And that they would test everything. They can't test everything, but do strict sample testing of absolutely everything that goes out the door. I mean, we do that with home electronics, right? So vaccines are not gifts from God that fall from the sky totally perfect. They're made by human beings. So here's what happens when human beings are not regulated and they're allowed to make vaccines. Okay, what do we see here? Mold infested the air where the COVID vaccine, and good for him for putting it in quotes because it ain't a vaccine, even according to the makers, where vaccine ingredients are made for Moderna and Pfizer. So something else you have to understand: Moderna and Pfizer are they're kind of like Sony and Panasonic. They're actually, if you know that industry, there are little companies all over that are doing the actual manufacturing and assembly and all that. And they just get stamped. Same thing with the Apple, right? Apple's made in China. Apple comes up with the intellectual property. They hire the work out. They put their stamp on the box and it's an Apple product, but it's really made by a lot of different people. Same thing with these vaccines. All right. So mold infested the air where COVID vaccine ingredients are made for Moderna and Pfizer. Let's take a look at these pictures. This is what they found in the factory where they were making the ingredients for the vaccines. So you would think that Pfizer and Moderna would be testing the ingredients very carefully. They would be doing strict audits of their suppliers. Electronics manufacturers do that. Anybody that gives a damn about what gets shipped out their door do that, okay? But apparently not for Moderna and Pfizer. So here's the filth and the mold. This doesn't show up, unfortunately, very, very well, but it's an air filtration system, and it's photos of mold-infested dust collection filters and ductwork for the air filtration system servicing these package rooms at the facility were taken by Realtor. I don't know what that means. I guess the guy that's, oh, you know what? I can make this bigger. Can I? No, I can't. They tease you. Come on, mate. Yeah, they won't let me do it. Oh, wait, let me try this. I hope this doesn't blow up. Let's see what happens. No, useless. Okay. Well, go to the article. Dave Stonebrook and Brooke Jackson are the whistleblowers. And as the author Warner Mendenhall says, others in the industry need to do the same. I think there's two kinds of people in the world: people that have worked in factories and people that haven't. It's one thing to watch these TV shows where they show, oh, here's how they bottle milk and here's how they do this. And that's interesting. And everything looks pretty good. I have worked in a factory, and not a pharmaceutical factory, just a factory just making, well, it's a long story, but making something that you see everywhere. Not the cleanest place in the world, not the most orderly place in the world, not the most well-organized place in the world, not the safest place in the world. I think they had better quality control than these people making ingredients for Pfizer and Moderna, but their quality control wasn't great either. So going back to this anti-vaxxer issue, the issue is strict regulation of the people that make and market these vaccines. The other question is, let's take the corruption out of science and medicine. And why is the United States the only country in the world that has its kids on a vaccine schedule of, I don't even know how many it is now by the time they're 18. I think it's over 70 if you take all of them. That's not science. That's not medicine. But the real issue, the issue that's always bothered me and has always concerned me, is this. And I wish you could see that. It's much clearer on my computer. And this. And this. The growth of mold in the air filtration system and throughout the packaging rooms is an expected result of the facility's inadequate cleaning and sanitation practices. And on it goes. I wish he wrote a little more for the public here, but this is what he's got. So if you go to his Substack, which is called COVID Lawcast, which, boy, we need that because there's a lot of COVID law out there, legal actions, and this is a good service. But anyway, two lessons here. When you hear the term anti-vaxxer, you are hearing a professional manipulator and all the idiots that follow them without thinking. And it's not an accident that that term was created. It was created consciously. It was spread consciously. It was given to all the news reporters. It was given to all this, a lot of CIA people working in the news industry. That's a fact. Right. So it was, hey, guys, we got this phrase. Anytime anybody asks anything about a vaccine industry, vaccine safety, vaccine injuries, vaccine courts, compensation for the injured, why kids are on so many vaccines, all these basic common sense questions that every intelligent, responsible human being, especially parents, would be asking. Anytime anybody brings that up, throw this anti-vaxxer thing on them. It works great. Right. And they figured this out. And the irony doesn't escape me, and I hope doesn't escape you. They figured this linguistic tool out with the term conspiracy theorist to shut down the conversations of people who are curious about all the bizarre facts surrounding the murders of John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy. And it's just an amazing irony that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the son, and the nephew, and the great environmental attorney who had the courage and the backbone and the willingness to sacrifice himself to ask these questions publicly. He's getting dumped on with this absolutely bogus anti-vaccinator. I mean, if you hear anyone say anti-vaxxer, they're either a professional manipulator or an idiot. And I don't care how great their education is or what profession they have. I know a lot of sub-moron doctors, sub-moron attorneys, and sub-moron college professors. Okay, don't be swayed by their education. So anybody that's using the term anti-vaxxer is either a professional manipulator or just an idiot, right? And that goes the same thing for conspiracy theorist. Okay, it's not a conspiracy theorist to ask why in the CIA's own files they have correspondence showing that they were tracking Lee Harvey Oswald movements long before the assassination. Okay, that's not a conspiracy theory anymore. That was something that intelligent people thought could have been the case based on some external evidence. Now we have the documents themselves. And they still haven't released, I think thousands and thousands and thousands of files. But we know enough to know that Lee Harvey Oswald wasn't a strange guy that just wandered in off the street with a gun because he had a grievance. He was connected. All right, so anti-vaxxers of the world unite, conspiracy theorists of the world unite. Every time you hear those terms, it's a professional manipulator or an educated, either overeducated or undereducated idiot. But remember, I want to show you these pictures again, because everybody needs to get this. We need these industries to be so tightly regulated that it like nothing compares, right, to the level of regulation these companies should have. And the problem is, the reality is, right now, they are literally getting away with murder. I mean, think about it. They are protected from all product liability. Now, if you have highly ethical people in that industry, they won't abuse that. We know we don't have that in that industry. All right, so this has been Brass Check with thoughts on what it means to be an anti-vaxxer and what it means to be a conspiracy theorist, and what's actually, and asking the question that hardly anybody's really asked: what actually goes on in these factories where these ingredients and these so-called vaccines are made?